anyone who has ever visited Niagara Falls, everybody knows the best view, similar to the one you're looking at right now, is from the Canadian side, looking at the U.S. Falls. So make sure you cross the border and get to the Canadian side to look at the falls.
For sure, yeah.
We've had a lot of really good scientific presentations today, and the topic of my presentation is a little more about the art of working together between academia and the pharmaceutical biotech industry. So I'd like to begin with a quick opening poll. Sam, if you could help me, please.
So we have one introduction poll for everybody here. And have you been actively involved in an academic industry partnership? And there are 3 options for everyone to choose from. So I do see we have a couple. Oh yeah, we have the responses coming. So I'll give everyone about 20 seconds. Another 10 more seconds for everyone. Five more. 3, 2, 1. Share the results as well.
Oh, that's excellent. That's good. It's taking advantage of, the opportunities that do exist in academia. That's very encouraging to hear that. And that was one other question, right, Sam?
This one, right? Have you been affiliated with a pharma accelerator, incubator? Yes, no, maybe in the future, or I don't see any value. And I see the poll results coming in, so I'll give everyone about 10 seconds for their thoughts and feedback. All right, so I'll end that poll over here. I'll share the results.
Okay, so a significant number have already been involved with one, and a significant number also are considering it for the future. So thank you, everybody, for participating in that poll. Now, what we're seeing today is that academic industry partnerships are becoming part of the integrated development strategy for the world's top pharmaceutical companies, and you've been aware of that. But it's also a growing number of academic institutions that are also looking to develop these types of partnerships with the pharmaceutical industry. And what's driving this movement from both the academia and industry is that the cost of drug development continues to escalate. Every 10 years, you'll see significant growth. And the yellow arrow on preclinical is because now there's a greater emphasis on how to improve early discovery, early drug development, preclinical work, and there's a feeling that academia can help support that effort. Here's looking at a 10-year period from 2007 to 2017, and you'll see that while the industry spent in 2017 $165 billion, and NIH added another $33 billion, out of all the work, you're still not getting a significant number of new drug approvals. So there's a desire to find a way to improve the development process and improve the hit rate on getting new products to the market. One of the other challenges that are driving the two groups together, academia and industry, is that for many years, academia relied on NIH funding in order to support their basic research work. And recently, there's been significant declines in the available money to support the researchers in academia. So academia is looking to industry to see if there's ways that they can work together and collaborate. Now, if you're on the academic side and you're going to work with big pharma, there are several things you need to know. One, you need to begin to identify a target or platform for a new drug, and then try to screen optimize that candidate molecule, perform preliminary efficacy studies in animal models, file IP patents for protection, do some early PD/PK work, toxicity studies, then follow on with IND enabling studies with a cGMP compound, and then you can be in the optimal position to present these findings to big pharma or a biotech company. And that way you'd be in a position to be well positioned for development or licensing agreement. However, you don't have to necessarily go through all of these steps in order to form a relationship with a big pharma company. And here's 4 different examples of companies, pharma companies that have developed ongoing research collaborations with different academic institutions. So one of them is Gilead, and they signed a 10-year or multi-year cancer research deal with the Yale School of Medicine that could pay the school, over $100 million over a 10-year period. Sanofi and Aventis announced a 3-year deal on diabetes research with Columbia University. Again, they haven't identified a product yet, but they want the researchers to collaborate together. GlaxoSmithKline signed a deal with Harvard Stem Cell Institute, 5-year, $25 million deal. And UCSF partnered with Pfizer that could be worth up to $85 million over 5 years. So here's some very good examples of how academia and industry can collaborate over multi-year agreements. Another interesting thing that's happened to the industry is that if you look at this chart where you see the top 20 universities that have initiated the most startups, now these startups are not all life science, but it's an indication of activity and the ability to develop startup companies from academia. So now the pharma industry says, how can we take advantage of these startups and work together and collaborate with the academic knowledge that has come out of these institutions? And what you see happening across the country and around the world is that the pharma companies have established these innovation labs. Some of them call them accelerators, some of them call them incubators, but they're basically lab space and expertise in order to help a startup company get going, get some expertise, learn some knowledge about how to interact with the pharmaceutical industry. And these seem to be providing some significant results. I'm personally familiar with JLabs, and they have a half a dozen different sites across the country. And they're reporting lots of success coming out of these startup companies where they're getting some good guidance from a pharma company early on. Now, I believe there are several keys to how successful partnering with a pharmaceutical company. One of those keys is to have a shared vision. And this is very important as you start working with 2 different types of organizations that have different sets of rules and mores, that you have a shared vision in terms of what's your overall goal and purpose. And I think the examples that I shared previously exemplify why you need to have a shared vision when you get started. Also, you need to find leaders on both sides in academia and industry, those that are able to communicate well between the business and academia in order to foster stronger ties between the 2 parties. One of the biggest challenges is communication. And so again, academia communicates in different ways than industry, and being able to create a shared platform for the exchange of ideas and information is very important in order to maintain good lines of communication, especially when you have changes in personnel more rapidly in industry than academia, but it can happen in academia as well. So to have this structured framework is important. It's also very important to have a clear agreement on who owns the intellectual property. And this has been a big challenge many times when there's collaborations. The academia might come with an idea, and then they work together and something else is found. And then the question becomes, who owns this new discovery? Does it belong to academia? Does it belong to the industry? Is it shared? And if it's shared, how does one or the other group go forward? So if you can identify how you will deal with this type of issue with intellectual property, it'll save you a lot of pain later on down the road. And also, if you can, you'd like to invest in a long-term relationship, something where, again, with those examples I shared, where there's a clear vision in terms of where you want to go, an understanding of what your overall goals are, then you can develop mutual trust, and then the long-term relationship can develop some positive results for both groups. Now, we've all been living in the COVID-19 era, and this too has made some changes in terms of academia and industry. One of the interesting things that came out of the federal government here in the United States was that when they were putting out a request for proposals for grants to look at different therapeutic interventions or diagnostics for COVID-19, they said that they only wanted to review short-term opportunities, short-term being defined as something that could be done within 1 to 6 months. They also stated explicitly that long-term solutions, 6 months and beyond, are not requested at this time. So given that there was this mantra that said only short-term opportunities will be pursued, then both academia and pharma embraced what people call repurposing in order to see whether there's a drug that's already available that could be repurposed for the treatment of COVID-19. And here's a schematic of the virus, and you see different points of intervention targeting where different drugs would potentially help to deal with the virus. And these are all repurposed opportunities. These drugs have been available for different indications and have been now repurposed for trying to treat the SARS-CoV-2. And then with respect to the collaboration, now here's a list of just a handful of the collaborations between industry and different academic institutions trying to work together to see whether or not there's an opportunity to quickly come forward with either a therapeutic, a diagnostic, or even a vaccine by working in collaboration. Now, Sam, we have a quick poll here, if you will, on repurposing.
Yep. So the third poll for our audience, are you or have you ever repurposed a drug? Yes or no? And I see many interesting. Yep, it's coming in. I'll give everyone 5 more seconds. Really straightforward question. 3, 2, 1. So we can see many people, I guess it's split, John.
Yeah, more no's than yes. Okay, that's fine. There's a follow-on.
For those that selected yes, please select a primary reason to save time, to reduce risk, or lastly, to reduce costs. So give everyone 10 seconds for those that selected yes earlier. 3, 2, 1. Looks like there's a good split here too, John.
Yeah, save time and reduce risk. Okay, and then the final for the people who said no.
And for those that said no, the questions available, please select a primary reason why. Concerns with IP, concerns with generic substitution, or lastly, concerns with physician acceptance. So you have these 3 options, and I'll give everyone 10, 15 seconds for those that said no earlier. Another 5 seconds in this poll. 3, 2, 1. Looks like concerns with IP is the biggest reason, John.
Yeah, okay, very good. Thank you, Sam. So for those that might be interested in learning more about repurposing and how it potentially helps with COVID-19 or the development of other drugs, I just wanted to share with you, these are 2 organizations that can provide additional insight to you. One is a nonprofit, the 505(b)(2) platform, and the other is just a LinkedIn discussion group that also talks about repurposing. Now, getting back to the academic industrial partnerships, I wanted to share with you my own personal experience. I've been involved now with 3 different academic industry relationships. I've always been on the industry side, working with academia. And my experience is that it begins with all smiles. There's people are feeling good, they see opportunity, and they're eager to get together and work together. And based on that, and based on the knowledge that they've had as they initiated the relationship, there was early success that was achieved. But like all research and development, it becomes followed by some failures. And the failures can be difficult to deal with. And sometimes it becomes contentious. Sometimes people are blaming each other or pointing the finger in different directions in terms of who's at fault. But ultimately, it is the market that decides. And what I mean by that is you might come up with a really good invention. It might be accurate, effective. But if the market is not going to buy it, if it can't compete with other technologies that are on the market, then it really is not worth the time, effort, and money for further development. And sometimes this becomes difficult. Perhaps a scientist in academia believes in their technology, which is understandable. But from the industry side, they say we can't sell it. And so it becomes difficult. So my one takeaway message for this presentation is that if you're going to get involved with an academic industry relationship, you really need to plan for failures. Now, what I mean by that is that we all know from many years of drug development that it's a high risk business. And if you worked in a big pharma company and you're spending billions of dollars a year in research and development, every year, every 6 months, you're reporting that your drug didn't work and you pass it on. Sometimes you get into clinical trials and the drug doesn't meet the endpoints. It is the nature of drug development. And it's important that in advance of a relationship, especially if it's a long-term relationship, that you plan for how you will deal with the failures such that the relationship continues in a positive way. And the reason that the failure part is important, because in this article here, most scientists can't replicate the studies from their peers. And this schematic shows you that here you have scientists following the same pathway, A, B, C, D, and you're getting different results. And this is the norm, not the exception. In this article in Nature, here you see they reported that more than 70% of researchers have tried and failed to reproduce another scientist's experiments. And that creates a difficult situation if one scientist came up with one result and another one comes up with a different one. So being aware that this is the norm is important. And to underscore the importance is that more than half of the scientists were not able to reproduce their own experiments. And so again, when you're going to have this academic industry relationship, recognizing that there's a high rate of failure is important, such that it's accepted and understood, and it doesn't jeopardize the long-term opportunity presented by the relationship. And with that, I will open it up to any questions that might be coming from the audience. Looks like we have one question.
This question is from Hugo Gagnon, CEO of PhenoSwitch Bioscience. About reproducibility. Do you think more universities would need to align with ISO norms? That would have two beneficial effects, bracket training and quality, close bracket.
Hugo, I think that's a really good idea. And I think it would benefit academia, even in their own research, to have these types of ISO norms in place, as well as simply attempting to replicate their study or having a colleague or another scientist replicate the study for the purpose of validating the results, not to contend with the results. See the next question here. Does the failure to reproduce break down to particular sectors of research? It is my understanding that it spans across all types of research. It's possible that some might be more than others. I'm not aware of that data, but my sense is that it's across all of the therapeutic areas, but more preclinical than clinical.
Is there any other questions for Mr. John? His slide deck will be available. You can either contact him or email myself or my team. We can share his contact details with you and his slide deck upon request. Oh, we do have one more question for you, John. It's from the CSO, Mr. James Keith. He said, failure to reproduce results begs for scientists to replicate their work multiple times.
Jim, I say amen to that, and thank you. I couldn't agree with you more.